Hi, welcome to Racehouse with me, Joe Lee.
And me, Darren Reeves.
It is the Singapore Grand Prix review. We've just watched the race. Oh my God, there was everything in this race. We had double stacks, we had double attacks, we had heartache, heartbreak, and we had well-deserved winner, I think. Darren, what did you think about this race?
Well, you know, I've been telling you that I've been enjoying now watching history being made. Well, we've seen the end of that history being made, and I'm actually really relieved. I loved this race today. I think we've just seen 3 cracking races since the summer break. To see another winner, I've got to be honest, I was cheering Lando on, but I know he just didn't have the tyres, just like Carlos. But I think it's been a cracking weekend, if I'm honest with you. I always knew something would happen to stop Max maybe getting 12, 13, 14, 15, even 18 races in a row at some point. And we've seen it right from the start of this weekend that there has been some major upgrades on those cars. And I'm fascinated now to see us move forward to Japan to see if everyone has actually caught up with Red Bull, or is it just track specific? Go on.
We can't get to Japan quite yet. We need to talk about Singapore.
No,
and
we do.
I think I called this because I said about McLaren, you know, they've had some upgrades. You know, Lando's had some upgrades, and he got second. So I'm quite happy with myself. We should do a prediction, actually, and put some money down at the end of each
I totally agree with you.
But yeah, I'll probably lose most of it. But look, look, firstly, let's get some things out of the way. Stroll, you know, he crashed, had this injury. I mean, it's a crazy crash. We all saw it. It doesn't help his season, which is underperforming. And then this happens as well. Not great. We won't go into it. But Red Bull was the big shocker. What happened to Max and Perez? What happened to the car? The car just seemed to have disappeared.
I think what it is they've been having problems with the ride height of the car. So it's been moving around a lot. And I think they lowered the ride height to get more grip because it was sliding around out of corners. You could see it in free practice. And so they lowered it for qualifying. And all it was doing was grounding out. And of course, as soon as it grounds out, it lifts off the ground, bounces. And I think they just had a shocker of a technical weekend all around. I think Max and Sergio would have driven exactly the same. But I think technically that they just couldn't cope with the track, where other teams made some right decisions, and it's a joy to watch.
Well, certainly, teams making right decisions. I mean, I think that the biggest surprise for me was Ferrari. I mean, the pole position for Sainz, which was incredible, but then to hang on, and we had all this pit drama. Everyone was changing their tyres in the safety cars. That we had sort of double stacks. It was really exciting when this happened, and Sainz managed to regain the lead, and he came home and won the race. I mean, it was his first race win for Ferrari. I mean, it sounds weird to say that because you think Ferrari should have been winning loads of times, but they got the strategy right for Sainz.
Well, mate, I've got to correct you because he won Silverstone last year. That was his first race win for Ferrari.
In Ferrari? Oh, he did?
Yeah, in fact, his first race
win.
Sorry,
I apologise.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, but I think we can go, again, right back to free practice on Friday. We can even go back to how they were performing in Monza. We were like, why can they do it for Monza but nowhere else? That's what we were saying last week. They have bought what they did in Monza and been better. All right, they haven't had to fight with Red Bull, which is what they had in Monza, but they have brought those upgrades to Singapore as well as Monza, and we've just seen the result of it. This car is working fantastically for Sainz. Leclerc, I think, topped free practice 1, but Sainz has topped everything since, and he's driving the best he's driven in his career so far.
He's amazing.
And I think he knows it. I think Charles knows it as well.
He's on top form at the moment. He really is. And it's so great to see that. And that's what we want to see in F1. We want to see this kind of really tight battle. So when we get to the end of the season, we're not sure who's going to win. I think we pretty much know who's going to win this season, but it's just been delayed. Obviously, with Max's great performance in the first half of this season, but that's come to an end now. You know, the winning streak is finished. The constructors' streak is finished. Also, you know, who finished? I mean, who did not finish? I mean, look at Yuki Tsunoda. Now, usually not a massive story, you know, the other tariffs, but it's a big story because Liam Lawson did so well again, and he got points. You know, some drivers, I know George Russell had to wait a long time to get his points. Sainz as well. He went out their third race ever, and he's up there getting points. And I think Yuki should be pretty worried about his seat as well. It's going to be a coin toss between him and Daniel.
Yeah, and you know the fact that I think Yuki was on 2 points before today, and Liam's just gone out and finished 9th. He's on 2 points. Daniel obviously hasn't scored any yet, but yeah, I think Yuki is under massive pressure from both Ricciardo and Lawson, and I think this is going to be the biggest story from now to the end of the season. We, like as you said, just repeating you, we know who's won the World Championship. There's no argument. Totally deserves it. That's all absolutely fine. But Lawson has just driven outrageously. He, you know, to see him pass Max Verstappen today, I know there were circumstances. For him to knock Max out of Q2 yesterday, you know, this is way beyond expectation and some. It's a dream for him. And I wish him all the best of luck. We want to see some rookies. I love the fact Daniel came back, but has Daniel had his time? You know, is Yuki a future Formula One world champion? You know, probably not. So where do we go with it? We need to be bringing these rookies in. Drogovic last year, who's Ferrari's third driver. We need to be seeing it in the same way Piastri's come in at McLaren. We need this turnover of new drivers, and I think 2 or 3 seasons for these rookies. If they haven't done it, haven't delivered, you know, it's a tough world. Liam Lawson, awesome driver of the day.
Do you know what
Arguably.
Could be a great surprise is I think he could be. I mean, I don't know if he was voted that. Maybe Sainz got it. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
Sainz did get it, but.
Did he? Yeah, but I know Liam Lawson was on third for the votes, and deservedly so. But hey, what about this crazy prediction that Daniel and Yuki stay at AlphaTauri and Liam Lawson joins Max Verstappen at Red Bull?
Well, this is not out of the question at all. Sergio, well, I know it was the car. It's just not happening for him, is it? And I think it is momentum. I think it's confidence. All these things that you need to succeed. You know, Max's momentum and confidence for those 10 race wins is it just builds and builds. Sergio, you know, I genuinely still believe when he went to Monaco, he thought he could win the World Championship, and this last 6 months, 3 months, whatever, has really knocked him. I think for the first time in his career, he doesn't think he can win the World Championship. And that's a massive thing.
Yeah, it's a massive thing. And talk about getting knocked. I mean, we look at Alonso as well. You know, like, you kind of think some races, he's going to get a podium. I mean, this is going to be lovely. It's a fairy tale. It's great for Aston Martin. But look, the bow tie did not work. You know, Aston Martin didn't have the pace. You know, it was Stroll out, you know. Probably didn't expect him to get points, I think, in this race anyway, if he was still going. But Alonso, pretty poor form. I don't know what happened there. The car perhaps let him down. He had that crazy penalty, which happened because of the he locked up, didn't he, as he was going into the pit lane,
into the pits,
which didn't help, obviously, at all. So yeah, that kind of cost him. And drama in the pits. I mean, sorry, going back to Leclerc, that whole thing when Mercedes double stacked and they brought the Ferraris in just before, but they didn't release Leclerc because they had to let Hamilton go.
Correct, who was double stacking as well.
A place behind Norris.
Yes. It was fascinating. And Leclerc did come out the worse for it. Unluckily, but watching the double stacks, it's so exciting to see all this pit lane drama and the the jeopardy of what if they do crash? What if somebody comes out early? It's just, this is why we watch it. Just going back to Alonso, where he outbraked himself going into the pits and crossed that white line. For those who don't know the rules of it, once you attempt to go into the pits, you cannot cross the line to come back out. He outbraked himself and went across that line. He then went back across it again to go into the pits, and I thought he might have got 2 penalties for that. So once he'd outbraked himself once, he should have carried on the track, I think. So I think he got away with it lightly. Then he had trouble in the pits with the tyre change, with the jacks not going up. But he was at one point behind Max. When Max was on his first set of tyres and they were really gone, he was holding up a big DRS train from, I think, somewhere around 9th or 10th, right back. He was holding up to watch Max Verstappen holding up the back markers. It's just insane to believe we've been watching this. So I think Alonso was just wrong place, wrong time, 2 or 3 times in a row, and that's what ultimately meant a 15th place finish. A really bad day, if not the worst weekend for Aston Martin.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot a lot about those details, and I remember seeing the tire change in the pits, and I thought, oh my god, it's one of those. They literally had to lift the car up to be able to get that tire on.
The tire,
the guys literally lifted up their hands. Yeah, it was. So maybe it was a back jack failure. I don't know, but yeah, probably something like that. But yeah, that's excruciating when they're counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Off.
That's it.
And it didn't quite happen for them.
It didn't. And Joe, you and I have been You and I have been walking up that pit lane at various races, watching these pit crews. Even on a Thursday, I can remember you and I in Portugal standing over the top of what was Racing Point, now Aston Martin, watching them practice and practice and practice. This is every weekend. They're doing it every day of every weekend. They're probably doing it back at the factory as well. These pit stops, and then when it comes to it, it all goes wrong. But that's why we watch it.
Yeah, that's why we watch it, because these are the moments where you can lose time and you can gain time, and especially with the safety cars and the virtual safety cars, a safety car essentially halves the time that you're going to kind of be penalised for, not penalised, but that you're going to take changing your tyres. So that's why everybody dives into the pits when there's a safety car. I think it takes from 20 seconds to about 10, 22?
Do you know what? Normally, I'd say at most tracks, the pit stop takes about 20 seconds. But due to the pit lane entry, due to the length of it, whatever, this is 29 seconds it takes to do a pit stop in Singapore. So this is a massive difference. Wow. So for that to be halved, of course, brings us down to 15. So again, the difference between 29 and 14, 15, it's huge. And you saw it with the fact the Red Bulls didn't come in. The only team not to come in under that first safety car. And I was like, they've rolled the dice. They have to do something different, which they did. But of course, their tyres they hung it out, waiting for another safety car, which didn't come until just after they'd pitted, where we then got the virtual safety car because of but this it had everything for me, this race. There was even a slight jeopardy that they were talking about some rain about a third of the way through it. McLaren seemed to think there was going to be a couple of minutes, but it never came. But just having had the weather dictate Zandvoort 3 weeks ago, I was like, oh, here we go. Here's a bit more coming, but it didn't. I didn't need it.
It was so warm there. Yeah, it was so warm there. It was so hot. You could see it. I mean, if you're on the social media accounts, people watching, you probably saw about 500 ice baths happening in the paddock. It looks like every single team have bought one of these Lumi ice baths, or they've used a container that they use for shipping. Certainly Haas do that. Haas use like a little kind of shipping container box, whereas I think McLaren have got like a proper Amazon bought ice bath inflatable thing, and all the social media posts were about all the drivers in their ice baths this weekend, which was funny to see. It was so hot. I mean, but at some points, I was watching Max. He was sliding around that track. A lot of these guys, they were sliding around everywhere. As a result, you saw a lot of runoff areas being used. You saw a lot of little mistakes. And, well, look at Ocon. He had a great race. I mean, that was a power failure in the end.
Yeah.
But I was gutted for him because he had a really,
I was gutted
really good
because
race.
it was his birthday. That's why I was gutted, mate. It was happy birthday to Ocon today, by the way. But he was driving a great race there with Alonso and Gasly stuck behind Verstappen. That midsection of it. He was there. I think Alpine have really their battle has always been with Aston Martin. Really, they've until this season. But I think they're there with Aston Martin now, where Aston haven't developed as well as other teams. Alpine are in there with them, and seeing them today with Alonso, I thought they had a great race. Unlucky for Esteban. But Gasly finished 6th today, a great result.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, Max got him, and Max nearly got Leclerc, to be fair, at the end. So his tyres really did switch on, but it showed you how important tyre management was today.
It's funny because I think when you're new to the sport and you're watching it, you think, oh, they just need to go fast, they need to drive well, and yes, you need good strategy and all this kind of stuff. You don't really think about these tyres. And what we don't quite understand is that they're going up to 250 miles an hour, something like this. These tyres are red hot and they are on real tarmac. This is a street race. So there's all the imperfections that you have from a road. They do give it a good clean and a good surface, make sure it's all fine for the race. But still, the degradation, and when you look near the end of the race, there's bits of tyre everywhere, all over the track.
It was shocking today. The marbles, they were there, right on the driving line.
Yeah, and the debris from Logan Sargent, courtesy of Logan. But he added to the booby traps that he laid on the track, which triggered a safety car. But yeah, the track was, oh my God. I mean, and this is a real street, so they're going to have to clean this up before they let real cars back on there.
Joe, I think it's really interesting where in Monaco now they resurface the track every year. So it's had street vehicles running on it and people spilling oil and diesel everywhere. So Monaco resurfaced, but Singapore don't. You can see where they've blacked out all the road markings, or even some of them are still there. And I think that's had a massive effect on how these tyres react to the degradation of the tyre, the temperatures of the tyre, and how important, everybody was saying, oh, it's a one-stop race. And I was sat there at the start of the race going, I think this is a two-stop race. And we've always had a safety car in Singapore ever since it started in 2008. So and Lewis interviewed just after the race said it was always a two-stop race. Always a two-stop race because of the tyres. So it's really interesting to see how much it affects. It's not just about the driver. It's not just about the car. It's how both of those are affected by that one thing that connects the car and the driver to the ground, and that is the tyre. They are hugely influential. And I love it. I'd love to see another tyre manufacturer back in Formula One. We had Bridgestone and Goodyear. We've got Pirelli at the moment, but I'd love to see that come back and some tyre competitions going on. Be great.
I think that would be good. I mean, also, if you've never been up close to a Formula One car, if you see one, and sometimes they have display cars in malls, if you're not near an F1 car, or if you're very lucky enough to go to the circuit and to the track and to the paddock, these things are colossal. I think the F1 cars are about 3 meters long, and probably, 2 meters wide. They are really big, and the tyres are huge. We're not talking about your normal kind of car tyres. They're probably at least double the width of a car tyre, I'd say, and bigger in radius and diameter. So they're huge things, and you have to be very precise when you're driving, I guess, because they're going around these bends, they're going around these corners, and you don't want to clip your tyre against the side of a track like George Russell did. A heartbreaking moment. He was right behind Lando Norris, and Lando clipped the side. You could see a little bit of dust just coming off there. And George, I think he was focusing too much on Lando. He didn't exactly see where. He really smacked that, and he went straight into the barrier. I mean, he was pretty much guaranteed a third on that podium, and he had to basically, he gave it up for Lewis. I mean, heartache for George.
Yeah, he was under pressure from Lewis as well. Lewis, I think, was faster behind him. But to see George, he knew he had a faster car than Lando, but I think the strategy played out by Carlos at the front to give Lando DRS, which meant that George couldn't use his DRS to get past Lando, was some of the best strategic driving I've seen in years. In those last sort of 7 or 8 laps, was just brilliance, which has pushed Carlos really up a bit higher in my estimation, really. The thought process is it was all about who can drive the slowest. And sometimes that is Formula One. Tyre protection, tyre management, DRS management, conserving everything. And it worked. He did it at the right time. And George just basically misjudged that corner, focusing on Lando, because he knew it was now or never. But the pressure from Lewis, just the combination of all of it. And I was gutted. I actually had Russell down to win today. And it looked like it was going to happen, didn't it? Running in there at the end, he's driving as well as he's driven. Really unlucky today, but good on him for going for it. We want to see them go for it, but things happen when you do that. They could have stayed safe, as we saw in Monza with the 2 Ferraris at the end of last race. It's just wonderful to see this racing.
It was great, and I love the fact that certainly the commentators on TV were saying, hey, look, they've got fresher tyres, they're gaining on them, and it was like a couple of sharks just kind of like honing in on their prey. And I love that feeling, because I used to get that with Lewis when he was hunting everyone down and picking them off, and it was such a great feeling. And this was great again. This was, hey, Mercedes, they're back, and I really felt that the threat of the Mercedes. I think, look, you got 1 lap left. Yes, you want to go for it, but you got to think in your mind, I don't want to mess this up because I do want a podium finish. I agree with you. The pressure from Lewis was insane. He even said on the radio, George needs to pick up the pace. And
he did.
I think Lewis was faster. He had a lot more grip. But how can you change cars around in this situation? You can't.
You can't.
It was, you take both of the cars out, and then I don't know. It was a tough one. Bad for George. It's happened a couple of times to him in his career, actually. Yeah. Williams, I remember he did this.
He did.
It comes down to experience, perhaps.
In Imola, he hit Bottas when Bottas was in the Mercedes at the time. They took each other out. But I just want to go back to team orders. Look, you just touched on it just then, where we can't switch Lewis and George around at that point in time to try and see if Lewis can get past Norris. There just wasn't time. But with that, and last week with team orders with Ferrari, we talked about, should Leclerc have finished in front of Sainz and they shouldn't have been fighting. The Constructors' Championship is worth so much money compared to the Drivers' Championship. All the prize money goes to the Constructors' Championship, if you didn't know that. So all the teams get the money. The teams then pay the drivers with that money. But as fans, as human beings, we connect much more with the drivers and the nationalities of the drivers and the hunger of the drivers than we do maybe the Constructors' Championship. But for to be doing team orders and be safe, it's sensible from a business point of view for these teams. From a fan's point of view, we want to see this racing, and to allow Mercedes to race each other this time, to allow Ferrari to race each other in Monza 2 weeks ago. We're seeing what the fans want to see. And I wonder if this is coming from the top a little bit more, from Dominicale or something, to say, look, let's let these guys race, and trust them. And, drivers have to trust each other. These are the top guys in the world, So I think it's been brilliant to watch.
Yeah. No, it's been good. And just about the constructors, I mean, as we stand there, Red Bull are in the lead, and obvious favourites to win this. I think they can't but not win this. But Mercedes are second, but 289 points. Ferrari close at 265. So really they needed George to finish this, because I think it cost them 22 points. And Toto even said this in the post race. He said, it cost me 22 points. This kind of stuff in the constructors. And you're right. That's what they care about. That's what Toto cares about, because he's going to pay all the bills. So that is super, super important. So he's probably resigned to be in second, but he wants to make sure he gets second. He doesn't want to be third behind Ferrari. And Ferrari now, with Sainz, in his stride, they're going to celebrate tonight. I'm sure the Tifosi back in Italy are going to be celebrating as well. On to Japan. Let's talk about Japan now.
Okay.
It's a real favourite track by so many drivers. Yeah. Why do you think that is, Darren?
I think it has the combination of everything a racetrack needs. You've got Turn 1, which is so famous for when Senna and Prost took each other off for the World Championship back in 88 or 89, something like that. I always think of that when I see the start of the Japanese Grand Prix. And then you come around that first corner, and then you've got this left-hander followed by a right-hander, followed by a left-hander, followed by a right-hander, and it's just awesome.
Okay, and that's the end of Darren's spoiler heavy track for the next episode of Racehouse. But in general, because we want you to do this for the next episode. We're going to take all the the jazz and the juice you've got. But in general, why is it such a favourite? Is it because is it just fast? Is it twisty and turny? Why do they like it?
As I said, it's got everything. It's got the twists and turns. It's got a really, really long straight as well before you come into the final chicane, which is there. And it's in a figure of 8, which is the only circuit that has a bridge on it that does a figure of 8, which just makes it that bit more interesting again. So it's just different. It's
cool.
a classic track. And it also, I think, I don't know if you've ever been to Japan, Joe, but it's one of the most amazing experiences. I worked in Tokyo and Osaka and tried to arrange for me to go and visit Suzuka, but the schedule just didn't allow for that to actually happen between the two festivals that I was doing out there. So it's a track I've never been to, but the culture of Japan is so magical and so different to any other country that you go over there and you embrace that culture and puts you in a different mindset, I think, for the weekend, for anybody that's working there or going over to watch the race. So I think it's a combination of all these things that just make a bit of magic for the drivers compared to some of the other European races, maybe.
Yeah, it's good. And also, I think from a sustainability perspective, Formula One are trying to make roads to make the whole series a bit as sustainable as possible, because we know, look, it's a spectacle, it's a moving circus with thousands of tons of equipment, but by grouping races together in their region, it works because you are saving the freight costs and the distance traveled. What many people don't know is that there are multiple sets of freight that go around. So you have a European set, you have an Americas set, you have an Asian set, a Middle Eastern set, and that is helping to kind of minimize movements and carbon emissions, essentially.
It is. It definitely is. And I think also, Joe, with that, I don't think they actually have the same set consecutive weekends anymore. I think a lot of it is being set up already. Yeah, I think they do. So you'll pack up in Singapore, and they'll go off to Japan where they've already unloaded some stuff and so on. But the Singapore stuff will be going to Qatar or whatever. I think it's 4 sets that just loop around and follow them. And they're doing a lot more sea freight now than air freight. Obviously, the drivers and team or the personnel are flying because of time, but a lot of this freight is sea freight, which I think Extreme E have been doing as well, making sure that they do all sea freight. So I think this is a massive, massive step towards this net zero in 2030 that we see printed around everywhere. And the fact that I think Formula One has to be a leader in this for other industries. So it's wonderful to see and to understand.
It is, and actually for our part, we plant trees with onetreeplanted.org, and I'll put a little graphic here. They're really good. Coldplay used them on their concert series on their tour, where they offset some carbon emissions. It's like $1 a tree, and it's really easy. You can just do a direct debit, and $50 a month or $100 a month is 100 trees. So that's a really nice way to do your bit, and if you're interested in doing that, check out what did I call it? What is it called? One Tree Planted. Yeah, onetreeplanted.org. And I put something here so people can check that out. We're looking forward to Japan next week. We'll be back with Racehouse. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Check out the merch on racehouse.cc. Darren's put his order in now, so it's going to be arriving very soon. And so we'll see how long the freight takes. Well, if it's sea freight, it might take a while.
It might take a while, mate. But I just want to, before we go, I just want to shout out to one of our listeners or watchers, a guy called Harry. He knows who he is, but he's been saying he's loving watching this podcast, Joe. So a little shout out to him, and it's a little tester to see if
fantastic.
He's watching.
Hi, Harry. If you made it to the end, then we'll send you a cap or something at some point. But yeah, thanks to Harry for watching, and thank you for watching as well, Racehouse. We'll be back next time with the Japanese Grand Prix preview. And again, if you have any comments or queries, do pop them in the comments box, and we will try and get back to you. Perhaps, Harry, if you have a comment, whack it in the comment box, and you can be one of our first commenters. But from now, it's goodbye from myself, Joe.
And it's goodbye from me, Darren. Take care, guys.